Fellow street epistemologist Kip joined me on a rainy afternoon to try having street epistemology conversations on the ferry between Seattle and Bremerton. We started out in the waiting area on the Seattle side, where Kip talked with an unnamed woman, whom we'll call Jane, about her disappointment in the results of the 2024 election and her frustration at being blindsided by a result that she thought would go a different way. We reflected together on the methods she used to come to the conclusion that her candidate would win, and what methods might have led to more accurate results. My name is Nick, and this is Conversations on the Coast. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hey, would you be interested in doing an interview while we wait for the ferry?
I don't know. What are we talking about?
We're talking about epistemology, which is the study of knowledge.
That's a little circular.
Okay. Yeah. So what it's about is we do something called street epistemology, which is we talk about something that you believe is true, and then we work with you to kind of unpack kind of the reasons and the justifications that support your belief.
Huh. Okay.
Does it sound interesting?
Sure.
Cool. That sounds good. Okay. This is Kip, and
Kip.
I will hand you off to Kip. And
Okay.
do you want to hold the
I
recorder?
guess how this works. I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's running, and they're on hold, so it won't automatically accidentally turn off.
Turn off. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to give my name or anything.
Okay.
You don't have to. It's good if you give a name. It doesn't have to be your real name.
Okay.
That's fine. Just so we have something to,
I see.
some way to refer to you.
Yeah,
So
sure.
Okay.
yeah.
All
Go
right.
ahead. I'll be.
So
I'll probably go get my stuff.
Okay. All right. I guess one of the questions we will often ask is there something that you believe that if you found out it wasn't true would change your behavior in some way that may really make you act differently? If you
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Okay.
Sometimes I've been in a situation where there's like my feelings about something don't really jive with reality,
Okay.
and I can realize that, and I just like accept, like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, but I'm okay with that juxtaposition, you know. But usually I feel like I'm down to change my behavior if something is shown to be different than I thought.
Okay. Yeah. So, is there something, maybe like something specifically that would be, how would I, Nick, how would I go? Like, I want to ask what would be the specific thing I would want to nail down to. I'm trying to find I guess I'm trying to look for a truth claim that we could examine, so that not so much what it is, but the reasoning that would get to that claim.
So we often talk about two different types of beliefs. One is like a value that you hold, and the other is more of something that you believe is true. So if there's something you believe is true that you think other people should also believe, that's interesting. Or if you have a value and there's a reason, there's like a fact-based reason that you hold that value or you think it's true and worthwhile. That can be interesting too.
Well, I'm not really like a faithful person. I have mostly I put my faith in people.
Okay, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah. And so that I think that gets me into a place where I tend to think more on the positive side of things than the negative, because I always want to think the best about people.
Okay.
Also gets me into a place where things like maybe our recent election happened, and then I have a lot of feelings about how I think people are being, because I was very disappointed in what happened.
Yeah.
Would it be interesting to think about why you think the result that happened?
Yes, but I don't think we have time for that for your podcast today.
I mean, we can get started, right? We can get started on that. I would suggest that you hold
you want to?
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
my first-
I've been thinking about that, and I really don't know. Although this might be a good example of something that I thought to be true. Like, I thought we, as a group of Americans, like all of us, kind of were feeling a certain way, and I was clearly proven wrong about that.
Yeah.
And that made me really second guess about what my understanding was about everybody else.
Yeah.
And I know that Seattle and Washington even is a bit of a blue bubble, and so maybe that explains it. Maybe I was sheltered here with a lot of people who felt similarly to me, and then the election happening with different results was a real wake-up call about most of the country is not feeling like we mostly are feeling in this area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as far as beyond that, I'm really not sure. I feel pretty stymied. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So where would I go?
I might ask, because you said you feel like people in Seattle are kind of in this bubble, and maybe people in Seattle feel like you, like they're not sure. So why do you believe that that's true?
I guess I feel like that's true just because I guess most of the people I know here, and I think I'm pretty typical of people in this city, most of the people I know here feel similarly, and I think that the policies we generally have here, I agree with them and feel very comfortable with that. So I suppose that's why. Yeah.
So are you mostly generalizing from your own feelings, or are you kind of generalizing from kind of looking at trends? Like, what's the thing that you're looking at?
Well, I've mostly been thinking about my feelings lately. And self-reflection on like, wow, I'm probably really out of touch. What's happening in America? Just proven on how I thought we were all feeling, and obviously there was going to be some people who didn't agree all along, but I was surprised at how the election turned out, and that shows me that I did not have my finger on that very well.
Yeah, and as far as the number of people, some people brought up the point that like, in the past, Trump lost the popular votes, and this is the one time that he actually won the popular vote.
Yeah.
So I wonder how we could explain something like that. Like,
I was glad to see that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me more upset when we have the electoral college result be one thing that's different than the popular vote.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't want it to be like that. So I was glad that it was not like that.
Yeah, I think I'm a little the same way. I that weird kind of,
yeah.
Well, it's sort of won, sort of didn't win. It's like, okay, just pick one,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Okay, I guess. So we're saying, so we're talking about, this location. So have you put in other? Do you like? I don't tend to travel to other parts of the country. Do you ever travel, or do you just kind of stay pretty fixed like I do?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mostly stick to the West Coast.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then I also spend time in New Mexico, and that's pretty interesting because I drive there, so I do cross a lot of the western region where people are conservative leaning in their political views. And then as far as New Mexico goes, New Mexico has a lot of people who lean Democratic, including Native American people, generally lean Democratic. And then there's a lot of people who are Republican leaning too in New Mexico. So to answer your question, I don't really get out into a lot of parts of the country that are different than me as far as political views. Yeah.
Okay.
But I gotta say that I may also be making a choice about that, especially in the coming time, where I don't really feel like I want to be interacting in those communities right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick had a recent talk where he went to a guy had a bunch of Trump signs out in front of, and even though we're not in really Trump territory, I mean, he had probably an hour-long talk with him. And that kind of
I live in Westport.
Oh, out on the coast.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's red out.
It is. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, okay, where could we go next? I'm still a little new to this.
Yeah, no worries.
It's my probably third day, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and I think he does it when he goes. He goes on a transit. It's like on a sound transit and talks to people almost
yeah.
probably every day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I guess it's a little practice run for me. I work from home, so I'm not out and about as much. And but it's kind of a neat setup to, as long as you're sitting there, you could
Right.
dig into people's beliefs and
Right,
figure
totally.
out. Yeah. So we had I think about a week before election, we had a whole bunch of political. I think it was like 12 episodes drop. Yeah, so I'm thinking over all those episodes, and I'm trying to think, okay, well, where could I go? Thinking of those topics. We had one really interesting one where there was a guy that, I think he was like down in the more Trump territory. I think it was down in the South somewhere, and he was like in the military, and it was kind of like a hidden claim. And it was like, well, where do you think I am, politically? And it turns out he was not at all for Trump. In fact, he was calling him a traitor. He thought he was really disappointed with the way that he ran the military.
Wow.
So, it's sometimes the people you think are,
Right.
supporters aren't,
Right. Yeah.
So that was an interesting episode. What else could we say? I guess one question I'd have is, what do you think about our two-party system? I mean, do you think that it should be a two-party system? Like, I mean, I've heard there's places like in Europe, I mean, they'll have like 10 parties or, real diversity that helps them kind of get around these issues where we're so stuck in this thing.
I think the biggest problem with our two-party system is that people tend to feel like they need to be loyal to the party. And I know, at least from the previous election that Trump had won, me talking with people that I knew, they didn't necessarily support Trump, but they supported Republican, right?
Okay.
And so they were voting for Trump, even though they didn't like him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's not awesome. The fact that people think that they need to be loyal to these parties because we only have two. And then you think maybe some people think the other one is terrible. I don't have a lot of actual knowledge or education about political science or political parties, so I can't really speak to anything in a meaningful way around that. Personally, I guess I wish that there were more choices, and back to my having faith in people, in this case I do not have faith in people, that they could actually be informed and think about it in kind of a big picture way. I think that if we did have more parties, it would pretty quickly degrade into two so that people didn't have to think about it a whole lot.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of faith in people in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Trying to think where I should go next.
Yeah. So, you talked some about, how you and a bunch of other people you think were kind of taken by surprise. It might be interesting to dig into why and how could you maybe not be taken by surprise in the future.
Oh, yeah. That's a good question.
Maybe testability, maybe, is generalizing from your personal experience a good way to believe that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I wonder if you have a confidence scale at this point, or would you say...
Yeah, confidence scale could be interesting. Where would you apply the confidence scale?
Yeah, I'm thinking... maybe how I'd ask the question is, if you're, on what... Well, how much is... if we had a scale of 100 or 0 to 100, how confident would you say that your personal experience is a good way to determine the outcome. Is that what I would say? Outcome of the election, or the to determine that people know what they're doing the right thing, or are qualified for the right decisions, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's it's maybe all about scale. There's like geographic scale, big and small. I live on Vashon Island. I have a pretty good sense of what people are doing out there. That's a really small scale, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of people. We're all in the same place. There's a bigger scale of like the region and the state, and then bigger scales. And I suppose that my accuracy around that probably relates in that I am probably going to be more confidently accurate about what people at my small scale think versus bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another sense of scale I was thinking a second ago. A scale around like peer groups. Like if you step out of your socioeconomic group or your racial group,
mm-hmm.
or any way that you can measure diversity, if you can look beyond and have a broad sense of diversity when considering these things, I think people are going to have a higher accuracy about what people actually think or how they're tuned in, right? And I perhaps do not have a very diverse
Mm-hmm.
social group. And,
Yeah.
and I don't mean like my direct social group, but my larger social group, where I associate mostly with people who are white, like myself, and I associate mostly with people who are in a higher socioeconomic area. And those things probably really have contributed to my misunderstanding of what's going on in America right now. And if I had a more diverse exposure to lots of different people and lots of different situations, then I'd probably be tuned in better, I expect. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess do we wrap it up now, or do we? Is there any major points we probably have to touch on still, or do you think we hit those? All right.
I'm not sure. I think there's probably a couple different ways we could go. But if you feel done.
I mean, so.
But I would be interested to probe, again back on the thing about like, wow, I was taken by surprise. If you thought about your confidence, like on a scale of 0 to 100 before the election, your confidence about what you thought was going to be happening, what would happen, where would you say you were on that confidence?
That's an interesting question. I'll elaborate a little bit. I was really confident at the 2016 election.
Okay.
And then I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and she didn't, and that really knocked me down a lot.
Yeah. So
going into this election, I didn't want to put a whole lot of confidence into it. Mm-hmm. But I suppose that there was some, I think, I don't feel like it's really confidence even, I just felt like I knew.
Yeah.
like I knew, and I felt like there were things that were so obvious, and like how could anybody like not see it differently than that?
Yeah.
Maybe that is the definition of confidence. But I didn't go into it feeling like cheerleader confidence, right? So even though I felt like there were certain obvious givens, and then to learn that there was not,
Right.
So, yeah, I suppose I was less confident than the 2016 election, and probably more confident than I had maybe been conscious about before the election happened this year. And then, learning that was not right.
So if you look at, your confidence in what you thought you knew in 2016, and then your confidence before the 2024 election, and then your confidence after the 2024 election in your beliefs, how do you think that would work? Can you put a number on those three, confidence for each of those?
Yeah, I could probably put a number on them. But I also tend to look at it like you should never say never.
Sure.
And that's kind of where I was at in 2016.
Okay.
Right? Like I was willing to say.
So you weren't 100%.
Pretty close.
But you were pretty
yeah,
high.
I was
so
close.
So would you put a number on it?
In 2016?
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, I would put like a 95 on that.
Okay, so 95%
back
in
then.
2016.
Yeah.
Going into the 2024 election, this election,
yeah,
where would you say you were on that same confidence scale?
Higher than half, so let's say 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
So-
much lower, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now my confidence level about all that is very low. I
Okay.
feel like I don't know anything.
So, I'm really interested to know, so before 2016, you were at this 95% confidence. Clearly, right, you didn't know what you thought you knew. What was that confidence based on? Like, why did you believe, what evidence did you have to make you believe in a 95% confidence level?
It was only, I mean, my exposure to like diverse communities is the same as now, not much. So it was only in reflecting on how I was seeing the election and the candidates going and thinking that everything was just so obvious about what kind of president she would be and what kind of president he would be that I figured that was as obvious to everybody else and that people had the same values, right? Like I valued her and her political career and the policies she was outlining, and Donald Trump was not behaving the same way, and I figured that everybody valued those things, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And that was I learned a lot about that at that time.
So how would you evaluate the methods you were using to figure out what was true at that time?
That's a really good question. Well, I don't think I have any more to add. Like talking to diverse communities, I think is probably the best thing.
Okay.
And I mean, I hate to say it, but like assuming that people can look at things objectively and evaluate lots of different aspects of a situation. I think a lot of people weren't doing that, and I think I learned that there's a lot of people who can't or won't do that, whereas I have to do that for myself. I do that for myself, and I expected everybody was doing that. So my methods about evaluating were not the same as everybody else's, whereas I assumed that they were because they seemed like the obvious way to do it.
But it sounds like your method of figuring out what was true before the 2016 election was your perception and the assumption that other people share your perception.
Yes.
So how good a method is your perception for figuring out what's true?
Right. Yeah, it's not any good, I'm being shown, at least for this.
So how did you revise your methods of figuring out what's true between 2016 and now, or before this
Right.
election?
I would say
November
I didn't.
4th.
I would say I didn't.
Okay.
All I did was make room to accept that there were people who were not going to do it like me,
Yeah.
and not have any methods about reevaluating that, just to remind myself that even though I think things are going to be obvious, they're not, which has been shown by my history there.
Yeah.
So just being more open to different outcomes is what changed for me.
Okay. So if you used a method to figure out, to predict the future in 2016, and you were proven wrong, why did you use the same method to predict the future in 2024?
That's a great question. I suppose my answer would be because I didn't really feel like I needed to have a different method. I just needed to have a different way of coping with what would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a different way of learning about the other people in this country, in processing what the results were. Yeah.
How important is it to you for your beliefs to be true?
Not terribly, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you had the chance before the 2024 election, would you have preferred to have had a more realistic or a better predictor of what had happened, or were you happy to kind of be where you were and then be surprised?
I would have loved to have a better information, better predictor of what would happen. Yeah, I would really like that.
So how do you think you could, for whatever the next thing is, let's say midterms, right? The next midterm election, right? What would you do differently maybe to build your beliefs that might be a better predictor of
Well, I see where you're going with the line of questioning, but I think there's a thing that comes in there about like people wanting to put an effort on this, and I'm not sure that I would really want to, but ways that I could think someone would do that, is to like consume from different news sources or go to the different social media places. There's lots of like different leaning social media places, and you can certainly learn about what people are talking about in different aspects that way. So yeah, I think it would be pretty easy with some effort. It would be pretty easy to come up with lots of different perspectives by just deciding to go look for them.
Yeah, and one thing I found that was different about this election, as far as getting the word out, is that like Trump is doing a lot more like long form podcasts. Unfortunately, I actually haven't gone over that. I can't say anything about those ones, but like I think the Joe Rogan one was like 3 hours where people could sit there and they could really listen to person really thinking out the thought, where his opponent didn't do that. Didn't go on a long form show to see a full person's reasoning, and some people might have said that might have been one of the things that kind of tipped this election. The media consumption.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you just talked about the future, like the midterms. So like, what about like back in the 2000s, like Bush won 2 elections in a row.
Yeah.
So when you were thinking about Trump versus Hillary, were you, and you had 95% confidence is what you said, were you thinking about those ones? Not, well, I guess they are pretty long ago now, but the
more recent ones then.
Yeah, like well, I guess at the time it would have been. So I guess he left it, but Bush left it 2009, so that would have been, maybe seven or so years.
Right.
So, was that a thought as far as your confidence?
I'm not sure, because George Bush was president when I became an adult.
Yeah.
And so yeah, those were really the first elections that I was paying attention to, and yeah, he won one of them, not with the popular vote, right? And so that was upsetting. And there was all the shenanigans in the Middle East, and that was upsetting. And then I supported Barack Obama, and that all felt great. And I think that, in 2016, Donald Trump didn't even seem to be as serious of a politician as all of the other politicians that came before, right? Including like George Bush. And suddenly, even to me, even though at the time George Bush didn't care for him, he seemed way better than Donald Trump in 2016. And it kind of like reset a perspective on all of that for me. So I do remember that at the time,
Would you mind if I took a picture from over here so it doesn't show your face?
Oh yeah, that's okay. Yeah, let me.
You didn't want to be identified.
Put my backpack down too.
Yeah. Document the behavior without doxing you.
Okay. Where can we go?
Yeah, let me just check the time so I don't miss my boat.
Oh yeah.
I have about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you taking the?
No, I'm going down to Vashon, so I got to go out there to the.
Oh, cool.
And it's going to take me a long time to walk there.
Yeah. What did you do?
I had surgery, plantar fasciitis. So, yeah. So I did both feet at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. So I
hope that's really successful.
Yeah.
I was looking at that and I was thinking, skiing accident. You don't normally do both feet.
Right.
At the same time.
I know, it's unusual. Yeah. To do both.
Okay. So I think we pretty much hit on
Okay.
all the questions that I could
cool.
think of right now. Yeah, so
Cool.
I really enjoyed the talk. It's, yeah.
Me too. Thanks for I had to wait a long time for this vote today, so
Oh, sure.
nice to talk about something interesting.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's something that I have been noodling on. Is like, what are the spaces where people are kind of waiting, and it would be entertaining to do something like
Yeah.
this. So that's why
Have
I
you
do it.
considered riding the ferries?
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Today.
Oh, you are riding the
You can't get
ferry.
in here unless you. Well,
Oh, I
well,
see.
maybe you can.
Well, I mean,
I guess you can. I
You
guess
can. You're just not supposed
Yeah,
to.
that was the point, was to ride the ferry today, but it
Yeah.
was more than an hour for the ferry, so I
Oh,
thought we'd
yeah.
try to get something in the...
Right.
Yeah, so we have a little sign that was set up.
Oh, cool. All right, that's cool.
Yeah, we used to go during the summer. We went around to like University of Washington and we went to
yeah.
Green Lake. Green Lake was great. There's a lot
Oh,
of
sure.
people. I actually had for a moment. I even had like a line of people waiting. To
Oh my
talk.
gosh,
It
that's
was
so fun.
amazing. I would have never have guessed that, but
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a fun thing to try out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've been listening to Conversations on the Coast, a series from Washington State featuring civil conversations using street epistemology to explore what people believe and why. Find out more at streetepistemology.com.